question you need to ask yourself is...
Are you ready to get casual? Grab your favorite adult beverage or combustible plant and join us for our roundtable TTRPG discussion. Oh yeah, it's time for Casual Friday. And now, here are your hosts.
That intro still cracks me up.
It's the greatest thing I feel like we've ever done creatively. Hey there, it's Casual Friday. I am GM Jim from the Wizard Sling. That is...
I am Brad Wolf with Diarden.
And I am Ryan Doyle at the Verdigris table. What up?
Hey, so this is Casual Friday. Welcome to it. Thanks for joining us. We are going to be... Oh, hey, Twin Steel. Welcome. Glad you can make it. We are going to be discussing things in the tater pig industry. And the first thing we are going to discuss... We're going to get to our ongoing discussion of the Player's Handbook here in a little bit. But first up, we want to support a friend of ours. So we are going to talk a little bit about... these side quests. Ryan, do you want to tell us about Anto's Kickstarter here?
Sure, yeah. Anto's been pumping out side quests. I believe it's on his Patreon. It's a zine, like an old school sampler. Here's a little of this, little of that. Players, dungeon masters. And then every year he makes an anthology, and it's been dope. So this is his third time doing it. You're not really... Sometimes you're trying to figure out if a Kickstarter's going to deliver, if we trust these people. This is his third act. He's getting better and better every time at it. It's cool. I don't know, monsters, locations, magic items, subclasses, all of the above, adventures, bits and pieces, just like old school magazine goodness.
There's some art. The Corpse Weaver is just one of the many new monsters you shall find inside Side Quest Year 3. Yeah, so that is Icarus Games, our buddy Anto, who is part of the reason why the three of us know each other.
That is true.
Sort of. Reverse. No, the three of us are the reason why we know Anto. That didn't make any sense. Please just ignore, pretend. I'm going to pull.
I knew what you meant.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Anto, beyond pumping out, cool YouTube videos and TTRPG content that you can use in your game, is also, I don't know, a cornerstone of community building for the TTRPG creator space. So he gets a lot of credit for a lot of people talk because Anto provides them connections. So thanks, Anto.
Thanks, Anto. The next thing, or sorry, Brad, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that?
I just love that kind of content, like the getting ideas from other people. I miss the days of when I was a kid and I excitedly got my Dragon magazine and Dungeon magazine in the mail. I miss those days. Now I don't want to go to the mailbox because it's full of bills.
Yep, running down to the comic shop to get the newest magazines with an onion on my belt, which was the style at the time.
It was the style at the time.
Turkey, which in those days we called a walking bird. All right. So the next thing on our agenda is a little bit of unpleasantness, unfortunately, because we can't seem to get away from this. And that is recently Chris Cox made some statements about that. Hasbro CEO Chris Cox made some statements about AI. He was speaking across all of Hasbro, but he did specifically mention D&D. Let's see if it has the exact quote. You're going to see that not just in hardcore brands, but basically it's a lot of this hedging stuff about like AI is inevitable. And I tend to agree with Chris Cox there. I think there are certain spaces it can be kept out of. I think D&D is a space it should be kept out of, but I don't think that we are going to get our way when it comes to that. He said, First of all, he said he plays D&D with 30 or 40 people regularly, which, let's see the receipts, Chris Cox.
I have built my life around D&D the last few years, and I play with 10 to 12 people regularly. And I consider that quite the achievement. It takes a lot to crack that like 15. And I am not the CEO of a major organization giving talks at Goldman Sachs, so feels like a lot. Feels like a lot. 30 to 40 people.
Tabletop family, there were some pieces of AI that accidentally made their way into the art in the D&D side. I know there was some stuff to do with Magic the Gathering, but I'm not very familiar with that side of it. Yeah, there was there were a couple pieces that slipped through, and then it was a big scandal, and they said never again, no more AI, until Chris Cox most recently said, all these 30 or 40 people, totally real people that he plays D&D with, every single one of them uses AI somehow for running the campaign, I don't know, they're using AI for NPC backstory ideas, blah, blah, blah. And so he says we need to embrace it. We need to do it carefully, do it responsibly, make sure we pay creators for the work. I have kind of a problem with that part, because that's what the AI is specifically made to not do.
Right.
Whether it's writers or artists or whatever, you're using AI to further Dungeons and Dragons. It is taking opportunity and possibly money out of the hands of creatives.
Right. Quick point to answer about the Magic the Gathering stuff. The AI art, as far as I understand, that was used in Magic the Gathering content was all on the advertising side. So it was like throwaway art that was used on their website for advertising upcoming products. And it was like, so it's like you take a piece of art to show off a card, and you want a background behind the card or behind the product that you're advertising. So you generate some generic art for the background kind of thing, I think is what that was. So, and I think that's actually a good use of AI. Like, when you're doing like throwaway advertising, I know a lot of YouTube creators use AI art for their thumbnails, right? Because, we make a lot of thumbnails. And, so I think that's the, I think that's kind of going to be a common industry practice. Like Games Workshop does it. You can tell there's like, AI art they use in the backgrounds when they're putting ads out on their webpage and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as AI used in content creation for the game itself, that becomes, a concern, because, again, are we eliminating people's jobs, right? That's the big question that comes with AI art. But from a company standpoint, and this is, when you look historically at like transitions, right? Like, Redbox helped put Blockbuster out of business, and then Netflix put Redbox out of business, right? When new technology comes out, companies kind of have to explore that technology, because here's the scenario I'm sure the stockholders, shareholders want to avoid, right? Like the scenario where, let's say a company like MCDM, like we know they're not, but for hypothetical, a company like MCDM or Paizo, what if they fully embraced AI tools and revolutionized the RPG industry, and then Wizards of the Coast goes the way of Blockbuster, and Paizo or MCDM becomes like the new Netflix of RPGs? You know what I'm saying? So that's the fear that, a lot of these companies have, is that some other company is going to do something miraculous with AI, and then you get put out of business because of their, swift development of new technology. So I think, So they feel an obligation to explore these things.
Yes. Tabletop family, yeah, it's like the old it's like a Fey rhyme, count the knuckles, count the toes. But it's going to get better and better, and soon you won't be able to tell.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to get super heated about AI because it feels inevitable. It's like inexorably going to get better and sneakier and more integrated into every aspect of life, and we just have to adapt to it. You know, we can like hold the line, which like I don't know any other industry that's doing it as hard as like TTRPG spaces seem to be, which like hell yeah. Like I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you guys in that. But like there's no world where we don't see an AI DM come out in the next couple of years. And yeah, if Hasbro doesn't do it, then their investors are going to be pissed that they didn't do it and someone else did it. My optimistic take is it's going to be a new, different way to play the game, and it's not going to replace the old ways of playing the game. And maybe it brings in new people. Maybe it's like a new on-ramp, and it's just like, here's a taste, the way like Baldur's Gate might be, or even like Stranger Things was. But like, I don't know. It's here. You're not riding a horse to work, and the Teamsters drive trucks now instead of oxen carts. Like it's the way of things.
It's pervasive across every single creative industry. You know, I know several audiobook narrators and voiceover people, and they're all looking for other work now because Amazon has AI audiobook narrators, and you can hardly tell the difference. And so yeah, a lot of audiobook people just can't make any money anymore because they're really only being hired for high-end projects. This is the way it is, and I agree with Chris Cox that it is inevitable.
Yeah. And the industry and people like us and everybody in between, right? Content creators who are bigger than us and smaller, companies, everybody's going to have to figure out like how you fit in and how does your business adapt to AI as it becomes more pervasive, because I don't think there's a way to make it go away.
I think it's bigger than D&D or TTRPGs or Hasbro, right? It's like, hey, the robots are going to take all our jobs. Like that should be good, right? That's like the dream of the 1950s. That's the Jetsons, right? But we're like, oh no, the robots are going to take our jobs. We're all going to starve to death. Right? It's a systemic issue. It's not really, our fantasy game is not going to be where, maybe it is where the solution lies, but we can't do it alone.
Yeah. Wolfeon says an AI DM sounds terrifying. I'm kind of hopeful, like Ryan, that like I think the AI DM will be subpar and no one's really going to want to use it. Or the people who do will. Like I remember when the board game Hero Quest came out and it was just a dungeon crawler, right? You guys are familiar with Hero Quest, the board game, right? When that came out, there were people who loved it as a board game. There's also people who loved it as a replacement for D&D. We don't need a dungeon master. We can do dungeon crawling on a board game now. And just so some of those people loved dungeon crawling without a DM. But the rest of us obviously kept playing D&D, and the rest is history, right? And then when EverQuest and World of Warcraft, when those games came out, right? Everybody was like, oh, this is the end of tabletop RPGs. Everybody's going to be playing the video games. And again, history has shown that, RPGs didn't go away with the invention of either of those things, right? So I'm hopeful that, AI or AI DMs and all that sort of stuff, some people might like it, some people might use it, but I think the rest of us are just going to keep doing what we're doing because we love the way we do it.
Yeah, I agree that an AI DM sounds terrifying, and I think that's the common place where people go where they start to think about AI in tabletop games as replacing the dungeon master. You know, they come to take our gerbs. Um, but I think probably why are they implementing this AI? Ultimately, they're doing it to make money, right? So how can they make more money? So an AI DM is going to be some kind of subscription service, something you're going to have to pay for. I think probably we're going to be looking once the AI gets better at being able to handle large projects at once. You'll be able to do something like go on D&D Beyond and go to a prompt and type in make me a campaign adventure from levels 3 to 12 that similar to Die Hard, has elements of the movie Speed and a little touch of John Wick, but is set in medieval fantasy. And then it will come back in 2 minutes, generate a 256-page PDF that they'll sell you for $49. And that's both awesome and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's bad right now. Like I kind of hang my hat on like, and that already happened. There was a million ebooks that came out in those like first 3 months that ChatGPT, they let us dummies play with it, and like straight up monkeys on typewriters, right? Right? People were just publishing crap. The publishing industry shut down. It was like, no more, please stop mailing us crap. And it's crap. So people kind of like bounced off of it, and that it's not gonna stay that way. And it doesn't make it in a vacuum. That you have to shove in 100 adventures for it to crap out an adventure. and that's where the ethics side of it comes down. And actually what Tabletop Family is saying is that like they don't use it because of, actually I can do this too. They refuse to use it, not even for morality, but like your imagination's a muscle, right? Like I don't remember anyone's phone number anymore, right? Because it's in my phone. So like I don't come up with creative ideas anymore because the computer does that for me. Why would I? And you surrender something of yourself, of your humanity. And not to go too deep with it, but like if the robots are the ones writing poetry and making games and music, like what are we doing?
Yeah. Well, and Twin Steel just said moral, ethical, and environmental, right? Like the environmental aspect, right, is how much electricity, right, and how many servers and all this data capacity that you have to have for these AI things to work, right? So that's an aspect of all this too that often doesn't get talked about. Is all the infrastructure that has to go into it to run these computers who are processing all this stuff for the AI, right?
And that's not baked in beyond like the TTRPG space. Like I think AI is overhyped and like underestimated for the future, maybe, right? It's never going to be worse than today. But I don't think it quite delivered on like what this time 18 months ago we thought was going to happen with AI. The second ChatGPT came out, it was like, world's different. And like, yeah, sure it is. I can watch Tom Cruise eat spaghetti and turn into Will Smith eating spaghetti, and like I can tell, but I won't be able to tell for long. But yeah, I don't know. So far, so good, gang. I'm not worried about Skynet yet. I'm not worried about it's bad, and that's in a lot of ways, and that's fine. But I think the cost, it's a bubble. I don't think the costs are accounted for yet.
Yeah.
And if you replace your workforce with 1 million machines that take up a ton of juice, and you start paying for that juice, I think people are going to start realizing AI is not the perfect solution for your business.
Yeah. The one thing though is we don't know how many like jumps it'll take in the technological development. I have a friend of mine who just finished his master's in computer science. He back to back did bachelor's and master's degree. And when he was in his bachelor's program, his professors were saying this AI is never going to get that far. We're still 10, 15 years out. And by the time he was in his master's program, the same professors are saying, yeah, we didn't think they were going to get it to go this far, this fast, but look at what they've done now. So it's, in the last, 8 years, it has taken a significant jump in its, AI's ability to produce, actual product, right? So who knows? We might have another big jump like that in the next, 5 to 8 years, or it might kind of just plateau at the point it is now for the next 20. We don't know until someone designs the next, brilliant computer chip. So it's fascinating, but a little frightening at the same time, right?
What a bummer topic. Let's move on to other things.
Sorry, everybody.
Sorry,
Don't look up
everybody.
the singularity.
So
Hey, I got this sweet new book we could talk about.
mine is arriving today. I'm at the FedEx Mercy, but it's supposed to be arriving at some point today. We're gonna talk about the Player's Handbook first, real quick. I wanted to soapbox something real fast. A couple days ago, I put out a video on my channel called "A Desperate Plea for D&D," and in this video, I make an impassioned plea around the abbreviation for the 2024 Dungeons and Dragons system or edition, and I made a plea that we call it 5.5, and that we should not call it 5e2e, 5r, 5rev, 5.24, 5.25, 5.2 anything or anything else. And I made this video. It's a very short video, but a very passionate, very impassioned plea. And I put the video out, and I got a lot of comments of people who were very angry. And I just wanted all you people to know it was a joke. The video was a joke. It was just a joke. I don't care what they call it. I wish they would pick something. I wish they would pick one today. And I wish we could all the YouTubers, everyone in the tabletop community would vote right now, and that would be it. But we can't.
Yeah, I prefer 5.5. So I'm with you on that front. For me, the biggest issue is I've made like over half a dozen videos about this new edition of D&D, and it's a mouthful to keep going back and forth between in 2014 and in 2024. Like, I get tongue tied. I have to edit so much more than if it was we just say 5 and 5.5.
Yeah, I am team 5.5 or 5R, which seems to be losing ground lately. Keep it simple. And I'm against 5.24 because if you project it outwards, we're gonna end up with 5.30, and then 6.35, and now it's just like, is it time for dinner yet? And I'm confused, and that's not tenable. 5.5, people. Let's go.
I was not in the White House. Actually, I'm not in the forest right now. Did you know that? I'm not actually in the forest right now.
Hey, but to circle back around to a couple comments that were just made, Tabletop Family was talking about like you don't use AI because it's like a crutch, and Ryan, you were talking about creative muscles. If you want to exercise your creative muscles, you got to check out Ryan's book for D&D. Oh. It's a great tool to help you generate ideas for player characters and world building. Fantastic book. So I'm going to plug that while we're talking about exercising your creative muscles.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I am waiting for the printer so I got a proof, and I changed a couple little marginal things, and the printer's like, awesome. Now you have to buy a new one, and we have to make a new one and send it to you for you to say okay. And I said, shit. So I did that. Spent the money. I'm waiting on it. I don't even think it physically exists yet, because the printing apocalypse has continued since COVID. I don't know why it takes 2 weeks to print a book still. But it's coming, and like everyone will know about it. But you can get the PDF right now. And if you go to the Kickstarter page, you can get 30 pages of it for free out of the gate. So you can get started at least while you wait for the physical copy. Thank you, Brad.
What's the name of that book?
The Game Master's Compendium of Explosive Creation. You can see me and these fellows and a bunch of other cool, interesting people messing around with it, building characters, building worlds all of the time on my channel. It's half of what the content is these days, because I love it. And it's a good excuse to hang out with people and see how their minds work. And it's just a bunch of awesome tables to make cool ideas. So yeah, forget AI. Think your own thoughts, create your own stuff. Buy my book.
All right, let's talk about the Player's Handbook.
Yeah.
All right, so where last we left off, we covered the first 2 chapters and part of chapter 3. We got up through the druid. So today, let's talk about the fighter. Do you remember this image right here when there was a big scandal that this might be AI art? There were a couple of YouTubers that did like deep dive investigations where they zoomed in really close on armor. Anyway, that was so dumb.
It's kind of, yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking
about. It was a real
about.
witch hunt there for a few months in the D&D industry.
Guys, legit, people came after me for like there's a comment on drive-thru because I didn't delete it because I can't, but like someone came to drive-thru and said I would buy your book, but you've got generative AI art in there. I was like no, I don't. The name of the guy is in there because I didn't make the art. I paid someone to do it. So it's also, I don't know. The image on the cover is like 6 years old. Like it's older than whatever.
Older than modern AI art.
Yeah, so whatever. I think it's just going to be more and more of these witch hunt situations coming for us.
Yeah. But yeah, the new fighter looks cool.
Say more about that, Brad.
I mean, it's a lot like the 2014 fighter, honestly. But the 2014 fighter was a solid class. The improvements you get more uses of second wind. So the fighter gets to heal himself more often. Hopefully that kind of helps with the whack-a-mole type of game, but it doesn't seem like it's going to help with the, player characters are hard to kill, right? So, again, player characters seem more survivable, doing more things per turn. It's there's a lot going on here. And if you really liked 5th edition, I think you're gonna really like 5.5. If you're looking for something more streamlined, you're not gonna like 5.5 because 5.5 just doubles down on everything that was 5th edition. So I'm still waiting to see the monster design. That's gonna make or break the edition for me. So if the monsters can put out more damage and do it in a fun way that keeps me entertained as a game master, I'll keep playing 5.5. But I need better monsters.
It's funny, Brad, something you just said made me think where you just said if you like 5.0, you like 5.5. And it just made me, the thought just popped in my head, who exactly is this for? I hadn't thought about that yet. Who exactly are these 2024 books for? And I think I have the answer. I think it's for people who like 5e, but are getting a little bit bored with it.
Yep, exactly.
Because it's 5e, but a little bit more in every way.
Yeah. Yep.
Huh.
Maybe we should call it 5e or e. Is that something?
5e.
5e.
But yeah, I mean, back to the fighter though. You get more uses of second wind. You do get this kind of cool tactical mind ability, which lets you use your second wind dice to add to your ability check. So you can use your second wind out of combat, which gives the fighter a little more utility. There's a tactical shift ability that where you can use your bonus action to take half your movement without provoking an opportunity attack. That's another feature of this new edition. You get a lot of exceptions to opportunity attack. There's a lot of ways the different classes can avoid opportunity attacks, which makes me think, why didn't we just get rid of opportunity attacks instead of adding all these features that help you avoid it? So, but that's the exception-based design of 5th edition. And then the other cool thing about the fighter is the Indomitable feature is actually a worthwhile feature now. It Indomitable used to let you re-roll a saving throw as a fighter, and which wasn't all that great. But the new one lets you, instead of having advantage on it, it gives you a bonus equal to your fighter level. So at high level play, you're going to be able to get like a +10 or +12 on your saving throw with Indomitable. So that'll help the fighter out in high level play.
One thing that just occurred to me, since the fighter gets more ASI/feats than other classes, the fact that so many of the feats now include a +1 ASI in the feat, that also boosts the fighter's power just because they get more than anyone else, so they're naturally going to have higher stats.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so overall, the martial classes got a significant boost. So that's another game design thing to talk about since we're on the fighter. All the martial classes got a significant boost, especially at high level. Their damage output's going to be closer to that of the spellcasters. But it's one caveat there is the better damage output is mostly via the weapon mastery, and that is largely going to be most realized with your melee attacks over your ranged attacks. Weapon mastery stuff like Nick and Graze, those are things that are going to help you put out more damage, and you can't use those with ranged weapons, I don't think. So the martial classes are going to put out a lot more damage, but they're going to do it more often in melee. You're not going to put out as much damage with an archer, which is kind of makes sense, right? The advantage of shooting at range, you're going to get hit less often. You can use cover and those sort of things, but the marshals, where their sweet spot is going to be running up and smacking stuff in the face.
And I think one of the things that they've done successfully with this book is made me excited to play a martial character. Like, I want to be on the front line, and that was not the case. That was not the case prior to this book, with some notable exceptions. They heard that they had a problem with this martial caster divide, and it's a long way to say they perfectly solved it, but they addressed it, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, Jay Tyler says that the 2024 is making it harder on DMs and for new players. I would highly recommend if you got new people, if you're new to the game, if you're new to 5.5, start at first level. I know the community as a whole likes to start at third level. Some people even like to start at fifth level because that's where you get all your cool abilities. And that sounds great on paper, but it really, if you're not really up to speed on the game, and this is true of the 2014 edition, gameplay can really slog if not everybody's up to speed. I'm a big advocate for low level play. Start at first level. Enjoy those first few levels of play when things are dangerous. Run all the different types of adventures that you can't do at high levels, like horror themes and murder mysteries. Those things you can do at first through fourth level, right? That you can't do at higher level.
Yeah. Couple things I wanted to point out here. First, under Action Surge, it specifically says you cannot take the magic action.
Yes, that's a big change.
So all those 2-level fighter dips for spellcaster classes, broken. No work, no more.
Yeah, that's a needed improvement. However, I think we're going to see fighter level dips for monk to get weapon mastery, and
yeah,
because I think especially mixing matching battle master, kind of moving on to the subclasses, mixing matching your battle master subclass features with monk is going to be a playground for the optimizers for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of, you guys want to talk about weapon masteries real quick since we're in the neighborhood? Just stop by real quick.
Everybody likes it at first, right? Or players. Like I was like, this was one of my favorite things out of the gate from like the UA playtest material of like, oh, this is an interesting system for making martials better, which is something that needs to happen. It does slow gameplay down. It did, in my experience, which is very limited. I've been running 5.5 for a week. It was worth working out all of the details at the table, stopping the game for a second. We spent 10-15 minutes talking about, okay, Nick, Vex, bonus action, how do these things interact, and answered those questions, and then it ran smooth. So I think there's like an initial investment of time, and then once everyone's on the same page, I don't think it slows down play nearly as much as, let's say, casting a spell and all of the interactions and questions that raises. Yeah, I think the downside is there but overestimated right now, and the upside's pretty cool.
I haven't run any of these yet, but I have been firmly opposed to them since they were discussed in the Unearthed Arcana, but I'm softening on weapon mastery a bit. I think, for the most part, most of them are okay. I think sap is way too overpowered. A fighter can run in and take 2 attacks on 2 different creatures, give them both disadvantage, and completely wreck. I think disadvantage for an enemy is way more powerful than advantage for a PC. And so I'm not sure about the ability to hand out disadvantage willy-nilly with sap, so I might not be into that one. And as I was looking at these, I really want to see the monster manual, because I hope, I don't know if Wizards is smart enough to do this, but I really hope that there are some monsters who have listed immunities that will say something like immunity to weapon mastery effects. That would be fantastic for the fighter to be like, whoosh, I missed. Well, I'll still graze him. Actually, you notice your graze doesn't seem to work on this monster.
That's an interesting idea, yeah.
And do like hobgoblins, right? Or the closest thing to fighters in my mind. Like, do hobgoblins have weapon mastery? It's like, what's your AC? Oh, okay, he missed. You take this much damage. Wait, what do you mean? It's like, weapon mastery. Oh, by the way, you have disadvantage. Yeah, we're looking at a third of a game, which is why it's so hard to have real opinions.
Yeah, and like you said, it's easy to just think as a dungeon master, well, I'll just give my monsters weapon masteries and then see how slow the combat is when both sides are doing an extra thing every single time they take a turn. All NPCs and PCs. Whoa. Brad, you were about to say something?
The Ryan's idea, I like that. Like, if the monsters have cool abilities too, that's going to make this game interesting, right? That's what I was saying before. Like, as a DM, I want to have fun too. I don't want to just manage all the cool player stuff. To use a football analogy, I don't want to be a game manager. I want to be able to throw the deep ball too and score some touchdowns, right? I want to do the fun stuff as well as a game master. So I want my monsters to do cool shit. If the players get to do it, I want my monsters to do it. I want to have some fun. And it might not be the exact same mechanics, right? Because the DM side and player side are very different. But as long as the monsters have cool, fun abilities, so it's interesting on my half of the table as well as theirs. That's what I need.
Yeah. You ever seen a player's face when you have your monster cast silvery barbs on them after they hit? And they're like, what? You're like, yep, I can use it too.
Now let's have a discussion about whether we want this in our game or not.
How does that feel?
Yeah.
Not good, did it? So anything else about weapon mastery?
Yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. I like it. It's hard to judge things in a vacuum. It is a subsystem that you could pick up and put onto monsters if you need to create more interest out of them. I hope that's not something we need to do, but we get to do if we want to.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is, I can always give my monster school abilities. I already do it. Like I give my monsters reactions and bonus actions in 5th edition. I started doing that after about 4 years of playing the game for the exact reason I just talked about. I want my side of the game to be as interesting as theirs. So I can always do it, and there'll be resources out there. But if I'm going to keep playing this game more than one campaign or, like more than 1 year, Wizard of the Coast has to meet me halfway on some of this, right? Because there's a lot of competition out there for my my RPG hobby choices, right? So
I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding in some boardrooms somewhere that the DM is 1/5 of the people at the table, so they're focus on the 4/5, but the 80-20 principle is a thing. It's got 17 names, right? Like if you don't have a DM, all right, you can invent a robot to do that job poorly, but we're gonna go play other games,
right? Yeah, I mean, for an RPG to be successful, it needs a community, right? Like 13th Age is an awesome RPG, but it doesn't get the credit it deserves because there's not enough people playing it. And the only way to get people playing it is to have dungeon masters, game masters who are going to run it, right? And that's so you have to keep that in mind as a developer. You gotta give your dungeon masters cool things to enjoy about the game too. But I think we're kind of off topic.
Casual.
It's Casual Friday.
I mean,
casual. Keeping it casual. That's how you know we're not AI generated avatars up here.
Right. You see,
we digress.
Count my fingers. Count my knuckles. They're all there. All of them. Should we move on to the monk?
Yes, please. Oh, sorry.
Couple quick things on the fighter subclasses. The champion is cooler now. Everything you got before, you get by the 7th level. You get all your cool stuff by 7th level, and then you get this cool new ability at 10th level where you can give yourself inspiration, which makes the champion a little more fun to play. Eldritch Knights, big improvement there is there's no limitations on spell schools of magic. You can pick any spells now, which makes the Eldritch Knight a lot more powerful. Psy Warrior got a tiny nerf, but it's basically just like the one from Tasha's. One of the things that got me most interested in Battlemaster is Commander Strike no longer requires your bonus action to use one of the Battlemaster maneuvers. That's the one where you can, tell one of your teammates to make an attack with their reaction.
It's like hand out an attack, yeah.
Yeah. That no longer costs your bonus action to do. And the rally ability is based on fighter level instead of charisma. So you take those two maneuvers along with the maneuvering attack ability, and you're actually able to build a fighter battle master that's kind of like the 4E warlord, where you're actually moving your opponents around the battlefield and commanding their attacks. And that's a build that the 2014 version kind of teased, but because those specific maneuvers weren't cost effective, nobody really used them. So that's another improvement on the Battlemaster. So those are my quick thoughts on the fighter subclasses.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well,
I like limits. So I did like School of Magic limitations in a narrative sense. However, yeah, busting that wide open makes it a much more powerful class. And I'm curious, do you guys have an opinion or a vibe on just like psionics getting a much more central role baked in? We get a few psionic subclasses, and we've it's been in the game for a while now, but it's like in the PHB this time. It feels significant in a way to me.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely made that shift. In fact, they were originally said we were going to get Swashbuckler as a rogue subclass, and they replaced that with the Soul Knife, right? So, in order to give more psionic theme classes, and thematically, I think that's cool, right? I mean, who doesn't want to play a Jedi, right? Play the Psi Warrior fighter, right? Or play Psylocke from the X-Men and play the Soul Knife rogue, right? Mm-hmm. I think those hit some cool power fantasies for people. But the obviously though, like throughout the history of D&D, the classic criticism of psionics is that it's just it's the same as magic. There's not a difference between psionics and magic, and that's been an ongoing criticism for every edition of D&D. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I didn't play 4th edition very much, but I don't know if there was an edition of D&D that really did psionics well. I feel like psionics has always been a criticism in D&D, but I think Wizards finally just decide to embrace that it's just like magic. You're just doing it slightly different.
But it's purple.
Yeah.
One thing I've been wanting to get, but I haven't gotten around to it yet, is to read Matt Colville's The Talent, or MCDM's The Talent class, because from what I understand, it's kind of complicated, but it has more feel like psionic, because I agree with the criticism that Brad said that it's hard to tell it apart from magic in a lot of instances, unless you're playing in a campaign and in a world that's sort of geared toward that, and sort of a Marvel-y feeling, it feels more superhero to me. Psionic feels superhero. So if you've got that sort of vibe, the CR system is not explained in the PHB. Hopefully, now they said that they've improved encounter building, but we shall see.
I'm looking forward to that. There are some stat blocks in the back, some monster stat blocks in the back for like familiars, for presumably like wild shape. So there's like inferences you can make, but no, we don't have the breakdown of the CR system and the encounter math, and they made some promises. So we'll see.
Yeah. So moving on from the fighter, which by the way, the correct answer is Echo Knight is the best fighter subclass.
Ooh.
If you haven't played one, you really should. Very fun.
They're cool.
All right, so moving on to our favorite punchy guy, the monk. This is the only one of these that I've built. The only 5.5 one that I've built. I made a 16th level monk because I might get a chance to play one in an ongoing campaign. It just depends. But I could say that building a 16th level monk, looking at all them features and feats and all them doodads and whistles was confusing. I was like, this is going to be a rough first couple sessions if I do make this transition.
Hey, folks watching at home, if you're going to play this or any game for the first time, start at 16.
Who else has thoughts on the monk? Who wants to go?
I mean, it's better all the way around. It's definitely an improvement over the 2014 version. The what you call it? The damage is improved. What do you call the unarmed strike damage is improved, and then it's just more efficient all the way through the class itself. And then the subclasses, for the most part, all of them are pretty tight, pretty well designed, I think. Improvements over the 2014 version, like Warrior of Shadow, still can can no longer cast Pass Without Trace or Silence, but when it casts its darkness, it can see through the darkness. So really like focuses the Warrior of Shadow on like moving in the darkness. And the Way of Mercy is very similar to the Tasha's version, and still solid because we know all the stuff as Tasha's was like an upgrade over the 2014 stuff. Warrior of Open Hand, if you liked it, kind of like the Fighter, if you like the Warrior of Open Hand in 2014, you're going to like the 2024 version. It's very, very similar, but just more efficiently designed, easier to manage at the table, I think. And then of course you got Warrior of Elements. That's whole new subclass. It's nothing like the old Warrior of Elements. It's it would take way too long to go into all the changes because it's completely different. It's much better. I just recommend, if you're interested at all in playing, Avatar: The Last Airbender, go check out Warrior of the Elements. It's a very cool, fun-looking subclass. It's one of the ones I'm most excited to play. If I ever get to play, I always DM.
Dude, my favorite monk feature, this is a very teeny thing. I don't even know what it's called or what ability it's a part of, but the monk can make a bonus action unarmed attack without having to take the attack action. And they could also bonus action flurry of blows. So the monk is the only class that can do that. Everyone else, if you get a bonus action attack, you have to take the attack action with it. The monk does not, and I love that they are the only people that can do that. It's not like a really huge deal. I don't think it's probably even going to come up that often, in gameplay, but it's a cool little thing the monk gets to do and makes them different from everyone else, which was part of the old problems. They didn't feel differenter enough.
Right. Well, and then like the abilities that let you dash or disengage as a bonus action no longer costs focus points. You can do that without spending focus points. But if you want to spend focus points on it, you can do both in the same turn. You can dash and disengage in the same turn if you spend a focus point on it.
Yeah, the monk is what I would consider a bonus action class, in that you are almost certainly going to do the same thing with your action every round, but you have a million bajillion things you can do with your bonus action, and that's what makes playing one tough, is that you have all these things you can do with your bonus action all competing with each other. Mm-hmm. So they did free up more of that stuff that you could do as part of the attack action or requiring no action at all.
Right, and that's what I meant when I said it's definitely more efficient in this design, and you're going to be able to do cool stuff without always spending a focus point on it. And so when you do spend a focus point on it, you're going to feel good about it because you're getting something extra. That's kind of my impression of like the improved design. Honestly, the hardest part about playing a monk, if you've played D&D for a long time, is getting used to calling them focus points instead of key points, because I almost tripped on my tongue like 4 times there in that last couple sentences. But overall, it's much better.
Let's call them monk points. We're going to make that decision right here, right now. They're called monk points.
Monk points.
Monk points. It sounds like a drink or like a dumpling or something. An order of monk points, please.
A full order or half order of monk points? Just the half order. My stomach's a little. All right. Anything else to say about the monk? I feel like they killed a little bit of the flavor, because before it used to say that you don't age, and you don't need to eat or drink, and now it just says not eating or drinking doesn't give you levels of exhaustion. That's just probably just some word saving, and maybe trying to make the monk not feel regional, not tied to any particular culture, perhaps.
I think that's part of it. I think it's also like, what if I want to eat and drink? And what about pooping? So kind of just sidestepped all of that.
Well, and that was the criticism that I have of 5.5. Well, it's a compliment and a criticism, right? I talked about this in my most recent video, that they worked hard to make everything more concise, like Jem, you were just saying about cleaning up the wording to make it easier and more streamlined. But then at times doing that then leaves gaps where you have questions.
I have a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
That I have prepared just for this show. So this is I know we're not to spells yet, but this is the 7th level spell, Delayed Blast Fireball, which is one I never really taken advantage of before, but this is a dope spell. Anyway, so you shoot a beam of fireball, and then it sits in a place, and it's a concentration spell, and it does 12d6 damage when it blows up. But for every round it sits without that you're concentrating on it, it adds another d6. So if you concentrate on it for 10 rounds and then blow it up, it would be doing, 22 d6? That's bonkers. Anyway, but so in the 2014 version, it says, when the spell ends, either because your concentration is broken or because you decide to end it, the bead blossoms and explodes. 2024 version, it just says, when the spell ends, the bead explodes. Doesn't make a distinction here between concentration or choosing to end the spell. Under concentration, it says, if the effect's creator loses concentration, the effect ends. Well, does that mean the effect ends mean the spell triggers or the spell fails?
I see what you're saying.
They cut out 13 words from the 2014 version. They cut out 13 words, which now creates this ambiguity in the 2024 version. Are you guys seeing this?
Yeah, I see what you're saying for sure. And it's weird. It's very important in all these to put yourself back in like a beginner mindset. That's what I keep trying to do, because it's so easy to be like, well, yeah, concentration means, but like we've hit the reset button in some ways, and people are starting from scratch here. I do think that explaining something all in one place has a lot of value. And even if it costs you more words, even if you end up repeating yourself, me having to flip to the rules glossary to look up concentration and then what a spell effect is, and then like down through a series of cascading tags is not as good as like, tell me how it works in one spot, please.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's a struggle in a game like this where you're trying to not be as extensive as Pathfinder and have all those things that Ryan just talked about, keywords and tags and all that sort of stuff. You're not trying to be that thorough of a game. You're trying to be a more, user-friendly game, but at the same time, you want this tactical complexity to keep escalating so that your current players feel like there's something new to do, right? So they're in like this weird spot where they're ramping up the difficulty, but also trying to streamline things. And I think in a lot of ways they do it well with this edition, but there's some glaring, some glaring issues that are going to need to be corrected, and we already see them, digitally doing errata to the D&D Beyond version. So,
yeah, and at times it feels like maybe being a little nitpicky, but like D&D rightfully gets held to a much higher standard than a two-person indie developing shop. Like, interesting question in chat, and yes, delayed blast fireball is still concentration, but that's a good theory. So Icy Design asked, does that mean it's maybe no longer concentration spell, which is a strong inference to make based on that language change. But yeah, it's still concentration, so that it does create a big question mark. Does it fizzle out or pop?
I don't know. It's unclear. I mean, and I think probably what would happen is at the table you would look at this, you would look at the rules and go, okay, it seems to imply probably if you break your concentration, the bead explodes. Because it says when the spell ends, and this says when the effect ends. And it's also implied that spells and effects are the same category of thing. But the problem is we had to have a discussion about it at the table and spend a couple of minutes, hopefully only a couple minutes, could be 10 or 15 minutes if you have that kind of table, discussing the exact meaning of words like spells and effects, the exact meaning of words like ends, and oh god, I would hate to be sitting at this table where this conversation was happening. I'm going to get up and go in the other room and lay down on the couch for a little while you nerds figure this out. I'll come back when it's time to play the game.
Just if that happens, folks, send them to us. That's why we'll do it. We'll have that conversation for you here at Casual Friday.
I believe we are out of time because Brad has a date with a bouncy house.
Yes. Yep. Gonna go watch some kids run amok.
Nice. Nice. All right. So what am I looking for here? No, there's where it is. Okay. All right. We're going to get out of here. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.